It's obvious in this video that I'm standing in a front-oriented position in my tree stand. And what I mean by this is I'm on the side of the tree where I expect the deer to travel to. Notice how much movement there is when I stand up, draw, and shoot my bow. With this orientation, there's a high probability of the deer seeing my movement and me getting busted. In this next video, I have moved my tree stand 180 degrees to the back of the tree. So I'm completely opposite now in this shooting position. Notice how little movement is seen as I stand, draw, and shoot my bow. In this position, now this is the position that as a self-taught hunter I have always adopted. It has always seemed logical to me to have the tree in between me and the deer, acting as a shield to my movement. With this position, the probability of you getting seen or busted is significantly lower than being on the front side of the tree, therefore giving you a better opportunity of making the shot.
All right, the second thing I want to talk about after we just got through discussing orientation is direction. Direction is completely different from orientation. As I mentioned earlier, orientation is based on where you have the highest probability that the deer are coming from, where you can predict, 80-90% of the time they're going to be coming from a certain direction. Obviously, you can't predict it 100%, so you got to try to be prepared for all situations when the deers come in. So in direction, how many times have you been in your stand early in the morning just to find out that when the sun come up, you're staring straight into the sun and you can't see? Always take your compass in the woods. Most people have got the phone app for compasses. Take your compass out every time you set your tree stand up. I mean, not just for wind direction, but for the sunrise and sunset. You don't want to be in the stand in the morning or afternoon and the sun be in your eyes, okay? That's one of the worst things. You put all this time and effort into scouting. If you hiked in there and, it's like me on public land, and like a lot of people hunt public land, you're scouting a mile, 2 miles deep in the woods. And you don't want you to get your hunt messed up by looking into the sun, okay? Take your compass with you. Make a list of things that you need to write down about tree stands and make sure you go over that list so you don't forget. Sometimes we get in a hurry and we just forget. We want to get the stand on as quick as we can. Maybe we got job responsibilities, a family, some kind of event to go to, or maybe we just running late that day for some reason and we got a little bit of time left, daylight, and we get to stand on there as quick as we can and come in the next morning, boom. We're trying to dodge the sun, pull a cap around to try to get the sun out of our eyes. So always take your compass in the woods when you set your tree stand up. That way, in the morning, your stand's not facing east. In the afternoon, it's not facing west, and you can see the deer when they're coming in. Okay, for the third part of this tree stand series, what I want to talk about is cover. Now, obviously, well, not obviously, but you can tell now I'm in a poplar tree. Poplar trees are really good trees to climb if you got a climbing stand. Nice soft bark, very quiet, and the bark stays attached. It's a rough bark, but it's thick and absorbs the tree stand as you climb up. Yes, it's one of my preferred trees to climb. But at the same time, they typically don't have any cover on them. There's no limbs on them. So what you got to do is you got to find a tree that's adjacent to the one you want to climb. So for this example here, I've got this maple tree right here. The height that I typically get is 25, 30 feet. So I've got to be looking, if I get in a poplar tree, obviously it doesn't have any limbs, I got to be looking for adjacent cover. That way we're not skylit when the deer comes through. You don't want them to see you. And obviously, like I've said before, we only got a couple weeks to hunt. If you're the average hunter and you want to maximize your efforts in the woods, we can't make any mistakes, especially hunting on public land like we hunt. So you got to find trees that are adjacent to the tree that you're in that still has foliage. Now, obviously in the fall, you're not going to get that as much. So that's another reason why to go a little bit higher. And you got to keep in mind the topography. So if you look around here, you can see how steep this is. So if you're going up this ridge right here, I could get 25 feet in the air and the deer coming off the top of that ridge could be looking me straight in the eye or even be looking over top of me. So you got to keep in mind the topography you're in and how the land lays and the way the deer come. I remember one time I got in this new setup. It was on public land, and I thought it was going to be awesome. I thought, man, I have hit it here. And this was just over a mile and a half, right at a mile and a half, I'd say. Got in there way before daylight, and I'm sitting there in the dark thinking, I'm gonna take a buck this morning. Because I pushed in closer to the bedding area and I felt super confident. That perfect twilight came, right before the sun comes up, and I heard something, and it was shooting light, legal shooting light, and I was already standing up. Most of the time, here's another tip: I'm already standing. The first 30 minutes in the morning, and the last 30 minutes in the evening, I'm already standing up. I don't wait till I hear or see something. I'm ready. I'm ready to shoot. The deer came from another direction that I wasn't anticipating, come off a little finger ridge and looked me square in the eye. And I blew it. The buck saw me move and he took off. So pay attention to the lay of the land, the topography, and the direction you think the deer come from. Now, sometimes you might not be able to help it, but always keep that in mind. But you got to keep in mind, you got to have cover, something to keep you hid. And that's why, another reason why I like to get on the backside of the tree, because in the fall, you don't have any leaves. Get on the backside of the tree, that gives you some cover, a lot more cover, probably 70-80% more cover than you're going to have in the front of the tree, because then you're just going to be dependent on your camouflage pattern to blend in with the tree. So that's another reason why I like to get on the backside of the tree. So always remember, you're trying to find cover. Obviously, evergreens, you don't have to worry about it. They got foliage year round. They still drop needles, but they still got some heavy foliage to keep you covered. So think about that too when you get in your stand location, the direction the deer are coming, their eye level. I mean, their eye direction. Are they looking up? Are they looking down? Are they going to be looking in your direction? Think about those things, and think about your cover. You got to have cover. We don't want to go in the woods and get busted. I don't want to go in the woods and get busted. We're out there to kill a mature buck. Okay, that's the goal. We want to harvest a mature deer. So we got to do all these little things. All these little things add up. So all these matter to a degree. I mean, you could sit down and you could probably talk about it with other people, and they'd say, well, that's about 10%, that's about 20% or 50% or whatever. So remember that all these little things add up and are very important to us being successful in the woods. And that's key. I mean, you got 5 days off, you got 1 week of vacation to go in the woods. You want to maximize your effort. So think about the cover you're in, and make sure you're not going to get skylit. You don't want to see the deer to see you in the tree while you're sitting there, and you definitely don't want the deer to see you when you draw back. So that's 3 items we've talked about so far on tree stands. And the funny thing about it is, before I started doing this video, I sit down and brainstorm, and just by myself, I brainstormed about 20 items. And I really don't want to talk about all 20, so I'm picking out, I think, some of the most important ones. So we're going to talk about those, and we're going to try to help everyone become better hunters. And one way of doing that is improving your tree stand setup. If you're wondering where the smoke was at in this video, you'll have to stay tuned for part 2 of this series on tree stands, treestand-ology. This video ran a little bit longer than I anticipated, so I'm going to break it up into 2 sections. So we'll see you next time when we put a tree stand to the smoke test.